Story of Who Moved My Cheese. Once, long ago, in a land far away, there lived four little characters who ran through a maze looking for a cheese to nourish them and make them happy. Two were mice named Sniff and Scurry, and two were little people named Hem and Haw. The maze was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, some containing delicious cheese, but there were also dark corners and blind alleys leading nowhere. One day they all found their favorite cheese at the end of the corridor in Cheese Station C. After that, they kept returning to the same place every day for to enjoy more of that wonderful cheese. It wasn't long before Hem and Haw had built their whole lives around Cheese Station C. They had no idea where the cheese came from or who put it there. They just assumed it would always be there. And then, one day, it wasn't. When they saw that the cheese was gone, Sniff and Scurry set off right away in search of new cheese. But not Ham and Haw. The two little people stood there stunned. Their cheese was gone. How was this possible? No one had warned them. It wasn't right. This was not the way things were supposed to be. They spent days being upset. Finally, Hall noticed that Sniff and Scurry had run off into the maze, and he decided to follow the mice and go look for new cheese too. Sometimes, Ham, things change and they are never the same again, said Hall. This looks like one of those times. Life moves on and so should we. And so saying, he left. After a few days, Haw showed up again at Cheese Station C with a few small pieces of new cheese and offered some to Hem. But Hem didn't think he would like this new cheese. It wasn't what he was used to. He wanted his own cheese back. So Haw reluctantly set off again and his own to look for new cheese. And that was the last Ham had seen for his friend Haw. New story. What happened next? For days, Ham stayed in his home by Cheese Station C, pacing back and forth, fussing and fuming. He still expected more cheese to appear every day and couldn't believe it when that didn't happen. He felt sure that if he stood his ground and waited it out, things would turn around. But they didn't. And why didn't Hall come back? Ham came up with a new different answers as he paced. At first he told himself, he's coming back, he'll be here any day now, and things will go back to normal. But it had been any day now for days, and Hall still wasn't there. As he grew still more upset, Ham's thoughts took a different direction. He forgot about me. He's hiding from me. He's doing this on purpose. How could my friend betray me like this? This last thought made him angry, and the more he focused on the anger he got. He was angry that Hall had left him alone, angry that the cheese was gone, and angry that nothing did seem to fix or improve the situation. Finally, he stopped and shouted, "It's not fair!" Worn out from pacing and being upset, Ham collapsed into his favorite armchair and began to brood. What if Hall got lost? What if he even heard it worse? Ham forgot about being angry and just thought about his friend and about the terrible things might have happened to him. After a while, a different question occurred to him. Instead of Why wasn't Hal come back? He began to wonder, why didn't I go with him? If he had gone with Hall, he reasoned, maybe things would have been different. Maybe Hall wouldn't have gotten lost. Maybe nothing bad would have happened to him. Maybe they would be eating cheese together right now. Why he didn't move with the cheese like his friend did? Why didn't he go with Hall? The question gnawed at him like a mouse gnawing on a piece of cheese. Meanwhile, he was getting hungrier and hungrier. Ham got up off his chair again to do some more pacing, and he tripped over something on the floor. He bent down and picked it up. It was only after he blew off the dust that he recognized it. It was an old chisel. He remembered the day when he held that chisel while Ha whacked him at it with a hammer until it made a big hole in the wall of Cheese Station C, looking for new cheese. He could almost hear the sound of the hammer and chisel echoing off the walls of the room. Pink, pink, pink. He poked around on the floor until he found the hammer they had used and blew the dust off of that too. He hadn't realized till that moment just how long it had been since the two of them, him and Hall, had gone looking for cheese together. He missed his friend, and he was starting to worry. All the time, he still expected more cheese to appear, and for Hall to come back. But there was still no cheese and no Hall. He had to do something. He could no longer stay home and wait. He had to go out in the maze and search for cheese. Ham rummaged around, found his running shoes, and put them on the way he and Hall used to do when they were first exploring for cheese. As he began to lace them up, he reviewed what he knew about the facts of the situation. He knew that he had to find more cheese. If he didn't, he would die. He knew that the maze was a dangerous place, full of dark corners and blind alleys to lead nowhere, so he had to be very careful. Finally, he knew that if he was going to get through this, find more cheese and survive, it was up to him. He was on his own. He wrote all this down on a piece of paper and put it in his pocket so he wouldn't forget. The facts of matter. Number one, I have to find more cheese. If I don't, I'll die. Number two, the maze is a dangerous place full of dark corners and blind alleys. Number three, it's up to me. I'm on my own. Knowing the facts of the matter felt reassuring to him. At least he knew there were things stood. He looked at the hammer and chisel. Maybe they would help him in his journey ahead, exploring the deeper recesses of the maze. He picked up the tools, put them in the bag, and slung it over his shoulder. Armed with the facts of the matter, in a strong hammer and chisel, Ham ventured out into the maze. For the next few days, Ham wandered through corridors, working his way deeper and deeper into the maze. The corridors were empty, except for a few small rocks here and there. No sign of cheese. Every time he came to a new chamber, he put his head inside to scan for cheese. But every single chamber was empty. Every so often he would come to a dark corner. When that happened, he would quickly turn back and head to the other way. He was determined not to get lost. Now and then he passed by a blind alley. He would peer down just to make sure, and when he saw that it ended in nothing but a brick wall and darkness, he would hurry on his way. Here and there, Ham could see that Haw had passed by that way, because Haw had scratched notes on the corridor walls, each note framed with a drawing of cheese. They made no sense to Ham. Anyway, he was too hungry and too tired to stop and read. There was still no sign of cheese at all. As he explored, Ham kept thinking about that question that had gnawed at him, turning it over in his mind again. Why didn't he go with Ho? To be honest, Ham had always thought of himself as the brains of the pair. Ho was a fine little person and a good companion, with a cheery disposition and a good sense of humor. More of a co-pilot than pilot, though. That's what Ham always thought. Now he wasn't so sure. Why didn't I go with Ho when I had the chance? He murmured to himself. Was it because he was stubborn, or just plain foolish? Or was he just a bad person? Little person? Ham thought about that as he walked through corridor after corridor. Maybe this is Spanish's punishment for something I did, he said out loud. The worse he felt about himself, the more his energy dropped, though he did not notice this. He was not even aware of the thoughts he was having about himself as he ran through his mind like little mice in a maze. Then he had a thought so terrible it froze him in his tracks. Maybe it's my destiny to run in circles and the maze forever. Mem held his legs about to give out. He leaned against the corridor wall and slid to the ground. On the opposite wall was one of Ha's notes. It said, "Old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese." Ham just shook his head. Oh, he murmured. What were you thinking? Cheese is either there or is not. Beliefs have nothing to do with it. For the first time he wondered if Haw might have gotten too weak to go on and simply given up. He wondered if that's what happened to him right now. All at once he felt alone and afraid. Nothing was the way it used to be. Before the maze was there, him and Haw had worked out and had a social life. They both grew up there and built their lives there. The maze and Ham's worlds. But the maze had changed. Now it seemed as if everything was different. Ho was gone, Sniff and Scooter were gone, the cheese was gone, and he was out wandering the corridors, getting weaker and weaker. Ham didn't understand why all this was happening. The maze had become a dark and scary place. He curled up on the floor and fell into a troubled sleep. Ham stirred and felt his foot bumping against something on the floor where he lay. A few somethings. He sat up and looked at them. They were round little rocks about the size of one of his fists. He picked one up and felt its smooth, shiny red surface. It wasn't a rock at all. It smelled good. In fact, it smelled so good, Ham wanted to take a bite. He shook himself. What was he thinking? Whatever this was, it certainly wasn't cheese. It might be dangerous. He looked around and almost jumped. There was another little person sitting nearby, watching him. It wasn't Haw, and not any other old friends either. Ham had never seen this little person before. He didn't know whether to smile and say hello or to be afraid. The little person lifted up one of the little red nut rocks and held it out toward him. You look hungry, she said. But I can't eat this, said Hammond. It isn't cheese. Isn't what? Cheese. Ham repeated it. It isn't cheese. Cheese didn't say anything, just looked bemused. Cheese is another word for food, Ham explained patiently. Everyone eats cheese, even the mice. Oh, said the other little person. They were both quiet for a moment. Then she said, I don't. I've never seen cheese. Ham found this hard to believe. A little person who didn't eat cheese? Impossible. The stranger was still holding the little rock out toward him. He looked at it and shook his head. Whatever it is, I can't eat it, he said. I only eat cheese. He laid back down again, feeling hopeless. After a few moments, he half heard the stranger say, I'll bet you can do a lot more than you think you can. But Ham had already drifted off again. When Ham opened his eyes a few hours later, he felt hungrier and he'd ever felt in his life. It's dinner time, and he thought, and then the reality of this situation came rushing back. No cheese, no dinner. He sat up, the stranger was gone, but the little red rocks were still there. He picked one up and smelled it again. It smelled sweet. Before he had time to think about what he was doing, he took a bite. It was crispy, also juicy, sweet but tart. It tasted like no cheese he had ever eaten. He ate the whole thing. He couldn't help it. He laid back and groaned. What have I done? He said. I ate a rock. He was sure he was going to die. He drifted off to sleep once again, and for the first time in days, he slept all through the night. When he awoke the next morning, the stranger was there again, sitting on her haunches with her arms wrapped around her knees, watching him. You are not dead, she said. No, said Hem, I am not. Am I? In fact, he felt a little stronger. The strangers were holding out another rock to him. Hem took it and ate it. It certainly wasn't cheese, but it was tasty, and as he ate, he felt his energy returning ever so slightly. The stranger talked to him while he ate his rock. Her name was Hope, and she lived nearby at a place called Fruit Station A. Fruit, she said, was what the roses were called? She also said they were called apples. By this time, Ham was on his third apple. Hope told him that the fruit had been getting scarce lately, and that for the past few days she had been exploring different parts of the maze looking for new supplies. It used to be that every day when I woke up, there would be more apples, she said. But that's been happening less and less. Actually, she said, pointing to the piece of fruit Him was not eating. That's my last. Ham stopped mid-bite and looked at her. You mean they are gone? She nodded. They just stopped showing up, and I don't know why. Ham looked at his mostly eaten apple, then at Hope again. You gave me your last apple? Hope shrugged. You look hungry. I was, said Ham. But aren't you hungry too? A little, she admitted. Ham thought about all the apples she had given him to eat, and realized he'll never thank her. Thank you, he said. You're welcome, she said. Ham shook his head amazed. Eating these things actually made him feel better, he said. I can't believe it. Hope smiled and said, "Sure you can. It's not hard, if you just let go and try." This confused him. Just let go and try what? He had no idea what she was talking about. He knew one thing, though. He was still hungry. All this talk about eating reminded him why he was out there in the maze in the first place. Now that this strength was starting to return from eating this new strange food, it was time to go looking for cheese again. So far he had failed in his quest, and he knew exactly why that was. "I just haven't tried hard enough," he explained. "What I need to do," he said, "is go explore the parts of the maze I haven't tried yet." Hope shrugged. "I'll go too if that's okay with you." Hope didn't see yet just how they were going to get out of their jam, but she had no doubt at all at the wool. Hem nodded grudgingly. It couldn't hurt to have some company. As he got his feet, he noticed again that curious note that his friend Hall had scratched on the wall. "Old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese." "Maybe not," he said to the note on the wall, "but I'll tell you what does lead to new cheese, trying harder." So saying, Hem slung his bag of tools over his shoulder, and the two set off, trundling down corridor after corridor, poking their heads into chamber after chamber, and carefully avoiding the dark corners and blind alleys. Every chamber they found was empty, but Hem had resolved not to give up. As they talked, Hem told Hope about the old days, about how he and Hall and their friends Sniff and Scurry would go looking for cheese every day, and how it used to be abundant and easy to find. Therefore, taking all they had to do was look up down a few nearby corridors, and there it will be. Simpler times, he said, and he felt silent as they walked home. Times had changed. He was not the same little person he used to be. He was once strong and proud, someone other little people looked up to because he was so sure himself. But the disappearance of the cheese had changed all that. Events had taken their toll. He was no longer strong and no longer so proud. As he reflected on all of this, it occurred to him that he felt less sure of himself than he used to. He could see that his usual confidence had been shaken. This was something new for him. He had never really noticed his own thoughts before or taken a step back to consider how he looked at things. To him, how he saw things was just the way things were. As they walked the corridors, the two found a few crumbs of cheese here and there, enough to nibble on and slow the gnawing on Hem's stomach. Hope tried a few bites of cheese, too, and she liked it just fine. Every now and then they found an apple, just sitting on the ground by the wall, which they split between them. Between the nibbles of cheese and the occasional apple, it was just enough to get them back to their starting point, where they would rest up for the next day's search. Every day when they set out, Ham felt he had less energy than the day before. When they returned to the same spot again, after hours of fruitless search, Ham would drop his bag of tools and slump down against the corridor wall, feeling even more exhausted. One day as they returned, Ham felt so discouraged and he didn't know if he could keep going much longer. All he could think about was how heavy his tool bag was. That must be weighed a lot, said Hope. It's not that bad, said Ham. He didn't want to admit how much it weighed or how drained he felt. Why do you bring it with you every day? She asked. It's for us to make holes in the wall, said Ham. He explained that if they found the right wall, he would ask Hope to hold the chisel the way he used to do, and he would swing the hammer the way Hall used to do. Oh, said Hope. Then she said, has that worked for you before? Of course it was, said Ham, though what he was thinking was, she asked a lot of questions. This is the finest chisel money can buy. What I mean is, said Hope, does making holes in the wall actually find you more cheese? Ham didn't answer. He felt offended. These were good tools. He put down the heavy bag with a loud shink and sat back against the wall. Ham missed Hall. He didn't like being way out here in the maze so far from home. He wanted things to go back to the way they were. You miss your friend, said Hope. It was a little unnerving how she always seemed to know what he was thinking. Ham shrugged. I just wish things would go back to the way they were. Hope sat down next to him and leaned back against the wall too. I know, she said. She glanced over at him. But I'm not sure that's how it works. What do you mean? Snapped him. He was getting a little annoyed. I don't think s- I don't think things ever go back to how they were, said Hope. Here's my thought, though maybe they can turn out better than they were. Ham didn't see how. Our trying harder plan isn't working out, is it? Said Hope softly. Ham didn't answer. He felt too miserable. Maybe we need a different strategy, she added. Ham glanced over and saw that she was looking at a house sign, the one that said, old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese. What if we tried a new belief, said Hope. Ham shook his head. You don't try a belief. Your beliefs are just there. Hope glanced back over at Hall and cocked her head. But what if you decided to change one? That's not how it works, Ham explained. Besides, I like my beliefs just the way they are. If I change them, who would I be? I wouldn't be him. He did not want to change or let go his beliefs, because he thought they were what made him so he was. Pet, you'll change your mind, she murmured. Why would I do that? Now Ham was getting irritated. I like my mind just the way it is. Hope shrugged again. I like it too, but we still haven't found any cheese. Ham didn't have an answer for that. They were both silent for a minute. Finally Hope got to her feet and said, well, good night, Ham. Sweet dreams. I'll see you in the morning. Ham sat against the wall, frowning. He was thinking about what Hope had said about his hammer and chisel. Of course, putting holes in the wall wouldn't do them any good. Hadn't he already known that? So why was he lugging around these old tools? because he didn't know what else to do. That's why they will never find cheese. He will never find his friend Hal. He will die here in this corridor with his useless bag of tools. Ham let out a very big, very long sigh, and then he asked himself the question that had nagged him ever since his quest began. Why didn't I go with her? And with that, Ham began to cry. Before long, he fell asleep. That night, Maze. Out of the Maze. Page 32. That night, Ham had a dream. In his dream, he saw himself back in his home by Cheese Station C, pacing and fussing and fretting and fuming. Something was different, but what? Then he saw what it was. There were bars on the windows. It looked like he was in a prison. Looking at himself through the bars, he saw how unhappy he was. In his sleep, he cried a little more. He woke up in the middle of the night, thinking about the dream. It baffled him. Why was he like that, a prisoner in his own house, missing his friend yet refusing to go with him? Ham lay awake on his back for hours, thinking about this. He thought about it until dawn came. In the early light, he could just make out Haw's scratch note on the wall about old beliefs and new sheets. Maybe Haw was right, he said quietly. Thinking out loud helped him to make his thoughts clearer, especially the more difficult thoughts like the ones he was having now. He thought about the day Haw left, so long ago now. Haw had tried to talk to him about what he thought they needed to do, and Ham had refused to listen. I was sure I was right and Haw was wrong, he said, but maybe I wasn't right. I didn't trust Haw, but I didn't trust my own thoughts. All at once, Ham sat up straight. Old beliefs, that's what Haw's note was about. But Ham had never stopped to think about what a belief was. Now he thought he knew. He clambered to his feet, picked up a sharp stone, and wrote his own new thought on the wall next to Haw's. When he was finished, he drew a picture of one of Hope's apples around it, so he would remember that it was his note and not Haw's. I believe is a thought that I trust is true. That's all a belief was, a thought. But look at how much power it held. Why didn't he go with Haw to look for new cheese? Because Haw was looking at things differently, and Ham couldn't see what Haw saw. His own thoughts had kept him there in Cheese Station C, because he trusted that they were true. He had believed that if he stayed and stood his ground, things would turn around. He had believed that Hall was going off on a fool's errand, that he, him, knew better. His beliefs were keeping him trapped in his way of seeing things. That was why he didn't go with Hall. Suddenly he understood his dream. The bars on his windows were his old thoughts, thoughts he trusted were true, but which actually prevented him from venturing out into the maze. His beliefs were holding him prisoner. He scratched out another note on the wall, and surrounded this one, too, with a drawing of an apple. An old belief can hold you prisoner. He pictured himself pacing back at home in Cheese Station C, and how he kept thinking that if he just waited, the cheese would start appearing again, and things would go back to the new way they were. That was another thought he trusted. Wasn't it another belief that held him prisoner? So, did all beliefs do that? He thought back to the day he woke up and first saw Hope, and how she had held out of an apple for him to eat. At first, he was afraid to eat it, but then he ate it anyway. He had trusted her, and she gave him her last apple. She was a good friend to him. Ham thought that was a belief that served him well. He wrote another note on the wall. Some beliefs can hold you down, other beliefs can lift you up. He thought back to Hope saying, "What if we try a new belief?" What had he replied? "You don't try a belief. That's not how it works." Maybe Hope was right though. Maybe you could change an old belief and choose a new one. He tried to think of an old belief right now, but he couldn't come up with one. This whole belief business was still a new way of thinking for him, and he wasn't sure how it all worked. He looked up at the notes he just made, with a drawing of the apple around each one. He remembered the first time Hope had tried to offer him a piece of fruit, and how he'll say, "Whatever it is, I can't eat it, I only eat cheese." That was what he would thought, and he'd trust that thought. But it turned out that it wasn't true at all, because he ate apple and felt better. So cheese wasn't the only kind of food he could eat. And now he thought differently. What did Hope say? "I bet you'll change your mind." She was right. He had. He wrote quickly on the wall again. You can change your mind. You can change. You can choose a new belief. Him noticed that he felt totally energized, and this surprised him. In the past, him did not like it when someone challenged his beliefs. He resisted changing his mind, and felt offended when anyone suggested that what he was thinking or saying might not be true. But now, instead of feeling bad that he'd been wrong, he felt excited by what he was discovering. He realized that before he had resisted changing his mind because he felt threatened. He had not wanted to change his beliefs because he liked his beliefs. He had thought they made him who he was, but now he saw that wasn't so. He could choose a different thought, he could choose a different belief, and he was still him. You are not your belief. You are the person who chooses your beliefs. So here's a real question, he said, pacing back and forth as he thought out loud. Now that I know what a belief is, and how much power it holds, and how easily I can choose a new belief, what should I do? He stopped pacing. The answer was obvious. He should use this new knowledge to help him finish their mission. He should go find more cheese and apples. The problem was they'd already tried everything. There wasn't anywhere else to look. There weren't any more apples or cheese to be found. They were out of options. It was an impossible quest, and if that was the case, then there wasn't really any point in trying. But what if the impossible part was just another belief? Could he change it? He felt a tingle run up his spine. What would you do if you believed it was possible? Hang on, though, Ham told himself. Let's be reasonable. This belief business could go only so far, after all. There were limits here, right? Ham held that thought just for a moment, then he took a breath, let go, and felt it begin to change. He looked at the sharp stone in his hand and wrote once more on his wall of notes. There are no limits to what you can believe. When Hope showed up a few hours after dawn, she found him sitting up, polishing his running shoes and humming to himself. She hardly recognized this new him. When she left the evening before, he was tired, defeated, and grumpy. Now he looked more refreshed than she'd ever seen him. She looked at the series of new notes in the wall, each one surrounded by the outline of an apple. My, she said, you've been a busy little person. Ham nodded, yup. What happened? She said. He looked at her. I changed my mind, he said. Good, she said. She looked at all of his notes again, then back at him. About what? Ham put his shoes down and got slowly to his feet. He was still stiff and sore from dragging around that heavy bag of tools. I haven't figured that part out yet, he said. Ham knew that what he'd been doing before wasn't working. He needed to do something completely different, and that meant he needed to look at things completely differently. He needed to change his mind and choose a new belief. But what belief exactly, he didn't know. Hope came over and sat next to him again. Mind if I ask you something? She said. She could see him was deep in thought and probably didn't want her to disturb his concentration, but this was something he needed to hear. You said your cheese was just stopped showing up? Like my apples? That's right, said Ham. Here's what I'm wondering. Before, when your cheese was still appearing fresh every day, where did it come from? Ham started feeling annoyed again. Hope asked so many questions. And what didn't matter where the cheese came from? It was gone now. It was gone now. He stopped. Ham looked over at Hope and thought about the question she had just posed. Where did the cheese come from? Had he ever asked this question before? Had Hope? He thought back, sorting through all the memories of times they had spent together looking for cheese, finding cheese, and enjoying cheese. Had they ever even once asked themselves these questions? They hadn't. He was sure of it. Him felt his pulse thick weaken. He didn't know why, but this felt important. He looked at Hope again. All traces of irritation gone now. Where did cheese come from? He repeated slowly. I think that might be a very good question. Hope's eyes sparkled. Does that mean you've got to answer? Well, no, said Hen. But it still seems like a good question. If we keep asking it, maybe we'll find a good answer. They were both quiet for a moment. Then Hope looked over at him and said, I wonder what's outside the maze. Ham stared at her. What's outside the maze? He shook his head in his belief. There's nothing outside the maze. What a thought, outside the maze? That made no sense at all. The maze was all there was. There wasn't any outside. Ah, said Hope. She paused, then looked again at him and said, Are you sure? Of course I'm sure, said him. They look at each other and then they both burst out with the same words at the same time. I thought you trust is true. Another belief, and it seemed to him that he might be the kind of that held him down rather than lifting him up. Could he change his mind about this one too? Ham shut his eyes and tried to imagine a place outside the maze. In his imagination, the all he could see was the maze itself, just as he had always known it. He opened his eyes again and shook his head. It's no good. I'm not seeing it. He looked at Hope. All I can see is what it's in the maze. I can't picture anything outside it. The maze was, after all, was all Ham knew. He had been Ham in all his life. Hope looked at him thoughtfully. Then she said, what if you just believe it me first? Maybe then you'll see it. That's crazy. Was that Ham was about to say. Instead, he said, that's a great idea. If there really were no limits to what he could believe, then why not give it a try? He closed his eyes again and began to think. There is something amazing outside the maze. Hem took a big breath and felt a new thought fill up his mind, and as he did, he felt himself thrust in it. He opened his eyes and wrote another note. Sometimes you have to believe it before you can see it. He looked at Hope and said, let's go find out what's outside the maze. She smiled. Sounds good to me. Maybe we'll learn where your cheese comes from. He nodded, excited at his thought. And your apples, too. Hope got to her feet. I'm in, she said. How are we going to do it? I have no idea, said Hem. And he truly didn't. Where would they look? He couldn't imagine. They already looked everywhere. Ham remembered when he and Hall used to go looking for cheese, they always avoided the dark corners and blind alleys. He explained this to Hope, then waited to see if she could come up with another good question. And of course she did. She said, what if those dark corners are not at all dark? How can they not be dark? Said Ham. After all, that's why they call dark corners. Hope reached up and took down a thick candle from a sconce on the wall. Not if we bring a candle. Ham was already up and staring down the corridor when he noticed Hope hadn't moved. She was looking down at his sack of tools. Are you bringing your hammer and chisel? Ham looked down at the tools, then slowly shook his head. I don't think so. Good, said Hope. She smiled. I don't think it works to launch an inquest with old baggage. They went back into the corridors they had already explored many times, only now they went looking for dark corners instead of steering clear of them. It felt strange to him, seeking out the very thing he had always avoided, but he decided that feeling strange was probably part of the process. Soon they came to an impossibly dark corner and stopped. They turned into the darkness and Hope lit their candle to light up the little passageway. Ham's heart sank. The candle's light shone just far enough to reveal that the passageway ended in nothing but darkness and a flat brick wall. Another blind alley, he said. Hope looked thoughtful. That's what I'm thinking too, she said. But what if it's not a thought we should trust? After all, she added, not all the dark corners are dark. Maybe not all blind alleys are blind. Ham liked that thought. He decided to see if he could hold on to it and trust it enough that it would turn into a belief. He closed his eyes and tried once more to use his imagination. For several long moments, nothing happened until, just as he was about to give up, he caught a glimpse of something flickering at the edge of his thoughts, as he were seeing, if not a light, at least the possibility of light. He felt his heart give a leap. Ham opened his eyes again and looked at Hope. "Let's try it," he said. The two walked slowly into the passageway, both feeling nervous as they walked. Ham couldn't help thinking, "The maze is a dangerous place." He had known this all his life, ever since he was a young boy. The maze is a dangerous place. The thought kept whispering in his mind. But if that was not a thought he should trust was true. He stopped walking and Hope stopped, too, waiting to see what he would say. "Just because you're thinking," he murmured himself, "doesn't mean you have to believe it. You don't have to believe everything you think." Hope didn't say anything. She understood what was going through his mind. They continued walking. Sure enough, as they got closer, Ham saw that there was a tiny light at the very end of the alley. It was the candle itself, reflected in a small window, set into a door. They opened the door and stepped inside a small chamber, much like the many chambers they had already explored. In the dim light of Hope's candle, they looked around the bleak little room. Four corners, four walls, nothing else. It was completely empty. Disappointed, Ham turned to go, but Hope stood still, watching him as if waiting for him to say something. "What?" he said. "It's empty." "Look that way," she said, and she waited some more. So Ham thought about it, and then he asked himself a question. If not all dark corners were dark, and not all blind alleys were blind, then could it possibly be that not all empty chambers were empty? On second thought, he said, "Shall we take a second look?" Hope smiled and took his hand. "Let's," she said. They walked along the first blank wall, turned the corner and walked the second blank wall, turned another corner, walked halfway along the third wall, and stopped. "Do you feel that?" whispered Ham. "I feel it," Hope whispered back. Cool air wafted across their legs. Ham bent down and sniffed at it. It smelled incredibly fresh. They got down on their hands and knees, and down at the knee level they found an opening in the wall, just big enough for a little person to pass through. Ham glanced over at Hope and gestured with one arm. "After you." Hope crawled into the tunnel. Ham followed. With Hope leading the way, they crawled and crawled until they both began to see a light at the end of the tunnel. The light grew brighter and brighter, and then all at once Hope and Ham emerged into a brilliant light, so that, blasting at first, they couldn't see a thing. They stood upright, blinking, and inhaled the clean, fresh air. As their eyes got used to the light, they looked around. They were standing in a beautiful garden, green meadow with a cool, gentle breeze blowing. Ham had never seen or felt anything like it before. He looked up at the ceiling, if that's what you could call it. It was so blue and so high up, and there was that blazing golden light there, brighter and warmer than any light he had ever known, too intense to look at it directly. Ham was speechless. He took a deep breath, put his hands in his pockets, closed his eyes, and turned his face up to feel the warmth. His fingertips felt something in his pocket. He pulled it out and looked at it. It was a piece of paper. At the top of it said, "The facts of the matter." He began to read, and then he began to laugh. Hope smiled, puzzled. She had never seen him laugh before. She didn't think she'd ever seen him even smile. "What?" she said. "What does it say?" Hem showed Hope the piece of paper. It says, "I have to find more cheese, and if I don't, I'll die." He looked at Hope. "But I found apples instead, and ate those, and I didn't die." She looked at him. "No, you didn't. I knew you wouldn't." It also says, "The maze is a dangerous place, full of dark corners and blind alleys." She nodded, and it was a dark corner that led to a blind alley that brought us here. "The last thing it says," added him, "it's that it's all up to me, that I'm on my own." Hope smiled. "Well, that one certainly isn't true, is it?" She held out a little piece of cheese she had just found. He took it and nibbled it at it gratefully. "No," he said, "it's not." As they explored the new world they were in, outside the maze, they found apples and cheese everywhere. They tried eating apples and cheese together. It was delicious, and everything was so right. They had never realized how dim and poorly lit things were inside the maze. It occurred to him that getting out of the maze felt just like getting out of the prison of his old beliefs. Maybe that's all the maze really was. One thing was for sure, the air here smelled so much sweeter. Hem looked down once more at his little piece of paper. "The facts of the matter," he said, and he laughed again. They seemed like facts at the time. Hope nodded. "But they weren't." "No," said Hem, "not a single one." He turned the piece of paper over on the back of the facts of the matter. He wrote down a summary of what he'd discovered over the past few days. The way out of the maze. Notice your beliefs. A belief is a thought that you trust is true. Don't believe everything you think. Sometimes facts are just how you see things. Let go of what isn't working. You can't launch a new quest with old baggage. Look outside the maze. Consider the unlikely. Explore the impossible. Choose a new belief. Change it. What you think doesn't change who you are. There are no limits to what you can believe. You can do, experience, and enjoy a lot more than you think you can. As they sat on the grass enjoying the sunlight and cool breeze, Hem thought again of his friend Haw. He will be enjoying all this even more, he thought, if Haw were with them. "You're thinking of Haw," said Hope. Hem nodded. As usual, she knew what he was thinking. He wondered how she did that. "We have to go find him," she said. "And your friends Sniff and Scurry, too." Hem looked at her and nodded again. "That's exactly what I was thinking," he said. "All right," said Hope. She smiled at him. "Let's go." They both stood up and Hope took Hem's hand once more, when suddenly, "Hem! Hem!" astonished at hearing his name being called in this unfamiliar place, Hem turned and stared at the figure striding briskly toward him. "It's Haw!" "You're here!" cried Haw as he embraced him and thumped him on the back with both hands. "And so are you," said Hem. He glanced around. "And Sniff and Scurry?" Haw laughed. Oh, you know them. They were the first ones out. But you, Ham, I was worried. You'll never find your way out of the maze. I almost didn't, I admitted him. I thought I was trapped in there. I thought I was going to die. He sighed. I was wrong, but I couldn't see it. I was stuck in my old beliefs. So what happened? Said Hall quietly. Ham reflected for a moment. First I got angry, then I got hungry, then I found hope. He turned to look at Hope and smiled. Hope, this is. I'm very happy to meet you, Hope, said Hope as she shook Hugh's hand. Charmed, Huff laughed and gave her a little bow, then said to him, and after you found Hope, then I changed my mind. Hope gave a warm smile and embraced him once again. I've missed you, my friend. I'm so glad you found your way out of the maze, and I'm even happier that you found how to change your beliefs. Beliefs are powerful things, aren't they? Said Ham. The three stood silently together, contemplating the awesome ability beliefs have to hold you down or to lift you up, and the thrilling discovery that you can change them and still be you. A thought occurred to him. Hang on a second. He fished in his pocket, took out an apple he had picked up, and offered it to Ho. Have you tried one of these? Ho nodded gratefully. Apples, he said. Love them. And they go really well with cheese, said the two friends in unison. Hope cooked at her. Do you know what though? The two turned to look at her. I'll bet there are all kinds of other delicious things to eat there. Here, she said. Things we've never thought of before. Things we've never even imagined. Him and Hall looked at each other. What was possible? Of course it was. And the three of them set off to explore. The end. Or is it another beginning? A discussion. When Dennis finished the story, he stopped talking and looked around the room. Everyone was in a deep thought. He waited. Wow, said Alex. Dennis turned to him and smiled. Wow? Good for him, said Alex. He did it. He made it out of the maze, just like Andy the Frisney in the Shawshank Redemption, said Ben. The rest of the group laughed. By now, Ben had a well-established reputation as a class entertainer. I had a boss once who wasn't so lucky, said Brooke. Really? Said Dennis. What happened? When I first got out of the journalism school, I worked for a Syrian newspaper. Nobody could convince the publisher we needed to get online. He believed print advertising would keep paying the bills. Even when our biggest accounts switched over to advertising on the web, he insisted that paid circulation will pick up again soon, even as more and more readers left us to get their news online. A year after I arrived, the whole operation shut down. Never found its way out of the maze, murmured Alex. Beliefs are powerful things, said Dennis. A single stubborn belief can take down an entire company. People believe that how things have always been is how they'll always be. But it never is. You know that Mark Twain said, Ben commented. It ain't what you don't know what gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. The class laughed again. Dennis smiled and said, Twain had it right, as usual. And here's an example. When the Titanic made its maiden voyage in 1912, people described the vessel with a single word, unsinkable, said Brooke. Exactly, unsinkable. That's what everyone believed in because they believed it, they didn't bother loading on enough lifeboats. And more than 1,500 people died, said Brooke. All because if I thought people trusted it was true, added Mia. The facts of the matter, murmured Alex. The class was silent for a moment. Oh man, said Ben. I'm starting to get the sense of that all beliefs are bad, said Mia. Narrow viewpoints that just get us in trouble. But that can be true. I mean, even Ham found some beliefs that serve him right. Absolutely, said Dennis. All beliefs are worth examining. The key is to notice your beliefs and test them, not necessarily discard them. Just getting your on our way and stop us from being in ourselves or even drive wedges between us. But some beliefs are powerful truths beacons that lift us up and help us keep moving forward, even in the toughest times, like the idea that all people are created equal, suggested Ben, endowed by the Creator with the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Or like Ham's belief that hope was a good friend, offered Brooke. Or believing in our kids, added Mia. Or in yourself, said Dennis. Believing in the idea that you were put here for a reason, that you have a unique value to offer to the world. For example, Mia, why did you become a doctor? To help ease people's suffering, said Mia without hesitation. Dennis turned to the group. You can see that's not just a thought she thinks is true. That desire to heal. That's the essence of Mia, showing through. Like Brooke's passion for truth and excellence in the printed word, there are core values, things that are simply true and never change. But for crying out loud, everything else does. Put in Ben. Also true, said Dennis, smiling, and that's where Ham got stuck. Circumstances change. The world turns, and things that might have been true yesterday suddenly are no longer true today. Blockbuster Video was positive. We would all go on watching movies on a videotape forever. Polaroid was absolutely sure. People will always snap their photos on little paper squares. Just like bookstores in the early 90s knew for a fact that an online bookstore could never possibly amount to much. They all built their futures based on beliefs that turned out not to be true, and it sunk them. Just like the Titanic, and Ben, just like the Titanic, Dennis agreed. He glanced around the classroom and noticed a quiet young man in the last row frowning. Tim, he said, anything you wanted to share? All eyes turned to Tim, who'd gotten the whole ball rolling the week before by asking his question. What about him? Yeah, I guess, said Tim. Actually, my work situation is okay. It's more than a personal thing. Dennis said quietly, if you are comfortable. Sure, so earlier this year, I found that my parents are already separated, actually, past tense. Everyone looked back at Dennis, who said, and that's been hard for you? Hard? It's impossible. All my life they were this constant, this bedrock, the one sure thing in my world, and they just give up. You sound angry about it, said Dennis. I'm furious about it, said Tim. I mean, I still love them, but right now I'm kind of hate them too. I just can't accept what they are doing. And does it say about my whole childhood? Is that all a lie now? You know, said Dennis. People change. Tim shook his head. Not like this. Dennis considered that. How do you think they see the situation? He said. Tim seemed startled by that thought. I have no idea. What do they say? They say they try their best, and that is that was the right decision for them, and that in time I'll grow to accept it, which I totally don't believe. Dennis paused and then say, "What if you tried believing differently?" "It doesn't work that way," Jim blurted out. There was a silence in the room, and then he said, "Oh, wow." He looked at Dennis again. "That's exactly what Ham said, isn't it?" He gave him a thin smile. Dennis shrugged and smiled back. "Pretty much." "So, what are you saying?" said Tim. "That they made the right decision? And that it wouldn't have been more right for them to stick together and work things out?" Dennis shook his head. "That's not for me to say. When looking at a belief, though, I like to use Ham's question. Does it lift you up or hold you down? Does it get you out of the maze or keep you running in circles?" Tim looked down at the table, thinking hard. "Just remember this, Tim," said Dennis. "Changing what you think doesn't change who you are." Tim looked up and met Dennis' eyes, then nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "Okay, I'll think about that." He paused and added, "Maybe I'll take a crawl through Hem's tunnel, see if there's anything bright out there." Dennis broke into a grin. "That's great, Tim." He glanced up at the wall clock. The class was just about over. "Last week," he said, "we touched on how confusing it can be when there is so much change happening all at once. And I'm paraphrasing here, but a few of you asked the same excellent question. Where do I start?" He looked around the room. "Alex?" The others realized that Alex, who had been so vocal the week before, had been nearly silent ever since Dennis finished telling this new story. Alex paused for a long moment, thinking hard. He began, speaking slowly at first. "Seems to me," he said, "that it starts with me." Dennis nodded as if to say, "Go on." "Well," said Alex, "I've been so focused on the problems, on my changing industry, how confusing it is, how hard it is to keep up and know what to do next. You said you'd move with the cheese if you could," put in Brooke, reading from her notes, "but half the time you don't even know where it went. Right, Alex?" And that's exactly what Hen was trying to do, right? Roaming all over the maze, trying to find the solution, but where we needed to start wasn't anywhere in the maze. It was right in his own head. When you said, "Get out of the maze," it hit me. The maze I'm stuck in isn't my job, or my company, or even my industry. It's my own approach. The maze I need to get out of, I think it's my own thinking. "Maybe it's time to let go of some old beliefs," said Brooke. "No kidding," replied Alex, "and choose some new ones." Ben grinned and added, "Don't forget what Ham thought about that. There is something amazing outside the maze." The group laughed again and broke into applause. Ben stood and took a bow. "Well put," said Dennis with a thoughtful smile. "When you allow yourself to believe it, an entire world of new possibilities opens its doors to you, which is quite an amazing thing indeed." And on that note, my friends, our seminar comes to a close. I want to thank you for all the great discussion and wish you the very best in your careers and in your lives. And I'll leave you with this thought. If you feel you got anything of value from this little story, then I hope you will. Out of the Maze by Spencer Johnson M.D. An amazing way to get unstuck.